Okay, in the last one, Process Philosophy by Alfred North Whitehead. Whitehead himself was born around 1861 and died in 1947. Whitehead was born in 1861 and died in 1947. He is regarded as the greatest philosopher of the 20th century. He is famous for being a great mathematician, logician, and scientist. He was also a lecturer at Harvard University in the 1960s in the United States of America. And something else about Alfred North Whitehead. People like to call him, or scholars like to call him, AN Whitehead. He wrote many books which are remarkable for his areas that he pursued, and he did it so well. Now, we may need in this lesson to think of his process philosophy, because he comes up with process philosophy. Okay, so examining Alfred North Whitehead process philosophy, because we will look at his struggle for existence in interdependence of God and the world. Above all, God in his process philosophy, is related to and dependent upon the world, and he is the final cause of the realization of values in the world and the conserver of these values. The other one is analyzing Whitehead's teaching regarding human existence and atheism. First is science and modern world. In 1925, Whitehead attacked the limitations of the modern scientific mentality and materialistic philosophy. He reviewed by analysis the limitations of scientific materialism, and he demonstrated that recent developments in science require a different worldview. He remarked further that Greeks regarded nature as rational. Also, medieval thinkers insisted upon God as one who ordered everything. Science has led people to scientific materialism. He calls scientific investigation with the concrete facts of experience. He calls this the fallacy of misplaced concreteness, the error of making the abstract for the concrete, the abstract for the concrete. That is what he saw, an error, that things have gone upside down, they are lopsided. That's how he saw it. Nothing that the main purpose of science in a modern world is to offer a thorough criticism of the abstractions of modern science. Whitehead maintains that the present facts not only are related to the past and future facts, but also are partially constituted by their relation to the former and later by their relation to them. He also criticized the theory of evolution, which was interpreted in materialistic terms. He said that the theory emphasized one of the developments of organisms, that is their adaptation to a given environment, their struggle for existence, and natural selection. There is also the other side that has been neglected: creativeness, the capacity of societies of cooperating organisms to create their own environment, thus friendly help as well as a struggle for existence. Whitehead pointed out further that even romantic poets of the 19th century, such as Wordsworth and Shelley, refused to accept scientific abstractions. They both bear witness that nature cannot be divorced from its aesthetical values, and Whitehead sees as a concrete fact or actual entity is process, and nature is structure of evolving process. In his book Religion in the Making, Whitehead discusses the nature of religion. Here, he raises the question, what should be the alternative of scientific materialism? And in this book, Science and the Modern World, he made it clear that he regarded religion as important. It must be taken into account by philosophers. He pointed the fact that he pointed that its history and persistence is in one ground of optimism. In other words, he could see in the book, rather, Religion in the Making, he offered a high estimate of it by saying religion can be and has been the main instrument of progress. In other words, it doesn't come in his process philosophy, it doesn't brush off religion the way Sartre, Jean-Paul Sartre, Nietzsche, and other atheists did. No, he didn't do so. What he did is he looked at the science and religion as entities that need to be in dialogue. So that is, there should not be an impression that creates that come. There should the impression that religion is fighting science or science is fighting religion should not be there. So he clarifies that this does not mean there are shortcomings of religion, or that the fact that religion can dialogue with the science does not mean that religion is lacking, or that religion has always been good. Not at all. Rather, he noted that religious experience and belief must be accompanied by emotion as a transforming power in life. That does not mean that science is not needed. Whitehead stressed that there should be no conflict between religion and science. This is because they have different functions and they deal with widely different aspects of reality. He also pointed out that science is concerned with the general conditions which are observed to regulate physical phenomena, whereas religion is wholly wrapped up in the contemplation of moral and aesthetic values. He noted that when there is a clash between science and religion, this should be regarded as an opportunity for further development, not a disaster. Both are in the state of development, and neither of them can claim finality at any stage for the formulations of its truths. He pointed out that one of the reasons for the decline of religion in the West, the Western world, is the defensive attitude of religious thinkers towards new scientific theories of the modern period. It cannot therefore gain power, religion therefore cannot gain power in the West unless it is willing to face change without fear. Now, when religion kills those experiences, those beliefs, those emotions, in order to be conditioned by science, in other words, it is like conquered by science, rather than a dialogue of purpose in his, the Whitehead's process philosophy. That is the beginning of danger now, or that is danger. We move towards danger. Yeah, and that is how he sees the death of religion in the West is coming as having been brought by this defensive attitude of religious thinkers themselves. Okay, when they became defensive towards new scientific theories in the modern period. Now, Whitehead, Alfred North Whitehead, raised the question: what is the nature of religion? In the Religion in the Making, he regards it as a transforming agency. In his book, Religion in the Making, he regards religion as a transforming agency. So religion is good for changing society for the better. That is transformative leadership role that religion provides. Therefore, human character and conduct depend upon beliefs when they are sincerely held. And he defines religion as, I quote, religion is the art and the theory of the internal life of man so far as it depends on the man himself and on what is permanent in the nature of things. This doctrine is the direct negation of the theory that religion is primarily a social fact. Religion is what the individual does with his own solitariness. Collective enthusiasm, revivals, institutions, churches, ritual, Bibles, codes of behavior are the trappings of religion in its passing form, but the end of religion is beyond all this. End of quotes. Now, you have noted something. Whitehead says something very interesting, and you can underline this, and we can even discuss and stop even the lecture and say, make a quotation from his own long quotation. Religion is what the individual does with his own solitariness. Can we discuss that? Can I hear a few comments, please? Just a few comments. Religion is what the individual does with his solitariness. What do you understand? What do you make of this? Okay, let me hear just quickly so that we move on and finish. Religion is what the individual does with his solitariness. I'm listening to you. Unmute and say something. In other words, first he said, if you note the quotation there, I put it on your screen, that he first attacked those individualists, the Western individualism, in particular when handling religious matters, and then goes on to say that this doctrine is a direct negation of the theory that religion is primarily a social fact. He says, why are you denying this fact, that religion is a social fact, not an individual fact? The sense in which there is social dimension of religion. As Ninian Smart will talk about the 7 dimensions of religion, Whitehead also sees a social fact in religion or in religious discourses. So religion is what the individual does with his own solitariness. In other words, religion becomes a companion even when you are solitary. Means you are alone, solitude, or when you are on your own. So when you are on your own, religion is a big companion. Okay, and it is that time when you go to revivals, you go to institutions, religious institutions, you go to churches, you go to mosque, you attend to rituals of that religion in order to deal with your solitariness. Okay, you deal with your Qurans, your Bibles, your codes of behavior, okay, and other trappings of religion. So religion is what the individual does with his own solitariness. It's logical in the sense that it is helpful to you to handle that loneliness. And there are those who come, is it Emile Durkheim, the sociologist of religion, who said that you cannot understand religion until or unless you focus on its functions in society. When you look at the functions of religion, you can now be able to define it. And the functions, according to him, are good because it brings people together. That collectivism, that collegiality that religion brings, that joint effort. Okay? And if you look at it here, it's more or less the same. This guy is also talking about it. The difference between Whitehead and Emile Durkheim, the sociologist of religion, is that this philosopher of religion, that is not Whitehead with his process philosophy, is a believer in what he is saying. But you remember, Emile Durkheim saw religion as good in bringing the cohesiveness of a people, bringing people together. but he did not believe in it. This gentleman here, Whitehead, believed in what he was writing, or he wrote that he believes in what he's saying. The other gentleman saying religion is good functionally wise, but not spiritual or anything. This gentleman does not see it from that end. You hear even the gentleman attacking the Western, the death of religiosity in the West. Yet he's one of them. Yeah. Okay. No, to one's conclusion, let me say that furthermore, Whitehead is interested in religion as a transforming power in the life of the individuals. Religion is a social fact. It binds society. Besides, religion is a world loyalty. Despite all this, religion is what an individual does with his solitariness, and religion is world loyalty. So when Whitehead examines God and the world, his concept of God is understood in relation to metaphysics. God is regarded as unique actual entity. He conceives God as concrete actual entity. First, God is seen as a source of wonder and value in the world. God does not create temporal entities. They create themselves. Therefore, God's function is to provide the ends of or final cause which guide them in the process of self-creation. He is God also, who is infinite, eternal, and unchanging. Whitehead, the process philosopher, sees religious problem of the conservation of value. He also sees religion as being conceived primarily with the realization of value and conservation of value. As far as the problem of evil is concerned, he uses metaphorical language and he describes evil to temporal actual entities and not to God. God is always regarded in Platonic fashion as a source of good but never evil. Therefore, actual entities or actual entities create themselves and are therefore responsible for the revolts of destructive evil against the good, not God. He also regards God as the superset object, which is apprehended by temporal actual entities. The attitude of God to the world is not wholly clear, but he says that kingdom of heaven is with us today. That is, God as a subject is the love of God for the world. God is a providential father. His reality in heaven passes back into the world because he's a providential father. Love of God is both vertical, according to him, and horizontal. Therefore, God is a great compassion, fellow sufferer who understands. You see, like Jürgen Moltmann, the German philosopher theologian, who says that I cannot believe in a God who doesn't suffer, a God who cannot cry, Eloi, Eloi, Lama sabachthani, cannot be my God. So a God who suffers with me, my economy, my pain, my stresses, is the real God. If God cannot suffer the pain and cry with me or cry in somewhere on, I cannot trust him. Now I trust God in Christ because he cried and he feels. So that is a feeling God. It's not an idol. It's not an object. So this gentleman here is saying God is in great compassion, a fellow sufferer who understands, in the ones that Moltmann almost used. So as far as the relationship of God and the world are concerned, they are interdependent, each requiring and being required by the other. Due to the above relationship, he opposes medieval Christian view that God is transcendent creator, and that it depends on God. But God doesn't depend on it, according to Whitehead. It depends on it's true. It's true to say that God creates the world, is that the world, but the world does not create God. Therefore, God is dependent upon the world for its temporal and changing completion, as the world is dependent upon God for its completion. In other words, even if human beings don't create God, then God expects them to continue the work of creation through what we call procreation. And according to Whitehead, okay, so the completion of the world is for human beings as they depend on God. As we continue teaching one another, empowering one another, building better homes, better societies, um, it is we are within, we are dependent on God, and we are moving towards completion. So God never reaches a static completion. He is a reality, but he is also a process. He is actuality and potentiality. God is involved in time and change. God is immanence and not transcendence. He is the source of life and he saves the world. In his book, Process and Reality, he teaches about religion further, or discusses this topic further. Process and reality. He does not attempt to show the existence of God, but he offers an argument for God's existence based on metaphysics. You know what is metaphysics? It's all about things you can't touch, like weed, belief. What you can't touch physically is metaphysical. As what you can touch is physical. So there's metaphysics or beyond physics or beyond touch. And Whitehead uses the metaphysical line of argument to prove God exists. It is here in this book, Process and Reality, that Whitehead, the process philosopher, offers cosmological, teleological arguments to prove the existence of God. And he shows that his aim is creative errors or love which seeks to attain the maximum of value in all actual entities. Whitehead shows that in nature, uh, Whitehead shows that in nature organizing, we seek not only to live, but also to live well and to live better. In conclusion, Whitehead says that God is required if the values realized in the world are to be saved from the loss. God not only affects the world, but is affected by it. It is necessary for the completion of his nature. So God is also the conserver of the world value. That's a summary of all these. Therefore, we can conclude the aspect of the theistic traditional conception of the nature of God as follows: that God is related to the world as it is reacting to him. Second, he is not wholly independent of it, but he needs it for his completion, as it needs him for its completion. It's like his building that we need God, God needs us. That his will, but of course that can be contested anyway when we think deeply about that, because when he creates an impression of we need God, God needs us, that is can bring some questions here, because do we need God? Can God do without us and all things moves on well? So that is a challenging thing. Number three, that his will must not be conceived as a sole cause which determines all things. Yeah, for temporal actual entities create themselves and are responsible for the evil they do. I repeat. Number three, that his will, that God's will must not be conceived as a sole cause which determines all things, for temporal actual entities or entities create themselves and are responsible for the evil they do. In other words, he's still defending God in what we call in theology, theodicy, where we defend God and say God cannot cause evil. Where there are evil in the world, somebody else like evil, but not God. God cannot cause evil. The last one, that although his power, God's power is manifest in the world, and the conservation of it in his even experience, he fulfills his purpose not by force but by persuasion, presenting deals uh, uh, that rule us as fulfilling to actual, I repeat, that although his power is manifest in the world and the conservation of it in his even experience, he fulfills his purpose not by force but by persuasion, presenting deals as rulers fulfilling to actual entitles. The last one, God is related to and dependent upon the world in the sense that his love and purpose for the world are essential to his nature. Uh, Finally, both Whitehead and Sutter have contributed immensely to human understanding of life and how it should be lived in relationship to God and the fellow human being. Sutter calls himself an atheist, yet he employs bishopric language. He taught that freedom goes with responsibility and accountability. Besides, human destiny is in our hands. Above all, life demands love. Life demands love, respect, and honesty. You see, an atheist saying very good things because the danger is when he creates an impression, as we wind up, that you can do all these things on your own. You don't need God. You can solve these things. You don't need to trouble yourself with God. Whitehead has contributed immensely on science and religion. They are complementary according to him. He defines religion as what an individual does in solitariness, and we have noted that earlier. Whitehead further stressed that conflict of science and religion is a good opportunity for humanity, for development, and other progressive things. That conflict makes us think through and focus more and build more and make the world a better place. So conflict is not in vain. It makes us, should I say, wiser. He stressed that religion is a transforming agency power in instrument of progress. Also, he sees religion as a transforming agency power in the lives of the individual. All in all, God and the world are interdependent, each requiring the other for completion. Lastly, God is never static. He is a reality and a process. He is immanent, showing his love and giving purpose to the world. Thank you very much.